Hello, and welcome to Traverse. My name is Franziska Eri. I'm a theatre and opera director talking to you from the RAM Theatre in Budapest, Hungary. Every week I'll be talking to different industry professionals from all over the world about their careers, the shifts and adjustments they had to make during this pandemic, and their hopes and dreams for the future. This is Traverse. What's next for our industry? Gyuri Szabó is the managing director of the Trafo House of Contemporary Arts in Budapest. Since opening in 1998, the venue has been hosting national and international artists presenting a wide range of work, including dance, interdisciplinary performance art, multimedia, new writing, and so much more. Against the backdrop of Hungary's long-lasting tradition of repertoire theatre and fixed companies and collectives, Trafo offers a different way of programming. Hello, Gyuri. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm just at the end of my COVID because I got it maybe 3 weeks ago, but I'm fine.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I feel much better, of course, but I've been calculating to leave my flat within 3 days or 4 days, hopefully.
Good. That's good. Good. You can return to society.
Exactly.
So you just mentioned COVID, and my first question would be, how has this pandemic affected you? And then we can also talk about how has this pandemic affected Trafo, of which you are the managing director.
It was quite difficult for us because we had very high expectation. Because last year our international program was very, very, very strong, really strong. I wanted to have a stronger international program because the recent government in the past 10 years cut back very seriously the independent scene. And unfortunately, though we, for example, Trafo and many other organizations, I'm sure, try to do their best. But of course, we have to face the consequences of this big cutback. This cutback, according to my estimation, is about 50%. So it's very, very big. Because at the beginning and in the first years, everyone would like to somehow to get through this, but because this amount did not develop really, that's why we can see that it makes a little bit weaker now the independent scene. So, and the pandemic, when it came, so it's like a real strike, so it's really crashed everything. And more artists started to think about the future, a much more protected future. So it means many of them, many artists, thinks that maybe they should do something else or something else beside making art. So anyway, it is very, very critical now, the situation, because even not like in England, where you live mostly, so there was a very strong supportive program here, not at all. And if you got some extra money from the state, it was really low, not so much. And so Trafo was influenced very much because the first shutdown we had in March, and the next one,
November, maybe?
On October, November, something like October, even so late October, something like that. We are under many courses, so it means we cannot do many things. We do not let in very often even the artists to make rehearsals. Right now, not possible. And then, so our activity moved on to streaming, but telling the truth, I don't like so much streaming.
Why don't you like it?
Because it's a necessity, because as far as I know, that using technology was all the time, let's say, the result of an evolution. But this time you have to turn to virtual reality, to streaming, because you want to generate income. Is it clear?
Yes, it is. You're basically saying that it's not an artistic choice to use digital. It's because you have to. Yeah.
It's a very clear, obvious constraint. Though I just read today an article on the music industry, and this music industry says probably because they were pushed so much to make gigs or performances, whatever, concerts via streaming, that probably in a very near future it is possible somehow to integrate into the concert life. It's a good question. But what is art? In that case, you have to talk about the role of art, because role of the art for me, it's a living creature. and what is different between cinema and theater in that case?
This is very interesting to me. So before we move on to Trafo and the work you've been making, let's talk a little bit more about streaming, because you're right, a lot of industries kind of had to make these sudden changes, and the faster you adapted, the sooner you could reach your audiences and make profit. And do you think there is a way to use the streaming in a more creative way, or in a way that it can feel more organic? And have you seen any examples of that?
Telling the truth, my opinion is very clear: no, or not yet. Because I saw so many things really. I'm very bored now. I don't feel motivation to see anything, even on my laptop, and even any films. So to watch all the time the flat screen, and there I don't have any psychological contact with the creation. I miss it very much. Somehow it's a very different experience to watch something through the screen or to see something. So it's very strange for me to say that, because I have to tell you, if I can say, if I loved art, that was movie, and the theater I hated all the time. But my life changed so much, so so it means it's equal. But now I have to tell you, the theater is a living stuff. Mm. I miss it because if I watch a film, it's like a ready-made. It's okay, it's done. There is no chance to have a mistake. So it's everything so well done. So it's a product. It's a product. But if you see something which is live, anything can happen. The connection with the piece is different somehow. I'm not expert. My background is I'm economist, so I have very different perception. I know comparing to other theater makers and goers, but I have lots of questions now, and I'm in a process right now. This is the third period when I try to write an article about the future and what was in the past, and I try to foresee what is coming or what can be the future of art.
And what is the future of art?
It's a very complex question, because I got back to the 60s and the 70s, because what for us, the meaning of art, I guess it's rooted in the 60s, 70s. And somehow that's period slowly, or not slowly, maybe it's ended. And something new must come, I feel that. So it means what we presented or in which we believed, let's say in the 70s, 80s, but mostly 80s, because that was the time when I got in touch with art, it's over. So this pandemic is in a way, it's, for me, it's a symbolic end of an era. And a new era will come when probably this virtuality, the virtual art, if I can say that, because these are two things. Virtuality, when you create a virtual reality, and that's another thing, when you know what is virtual reality, but how you can make art in virtual reality, that's another question. It's a very basic question, very fundamental question anyway. But in general, that kind of art, what I presented and I work for, I guess it will lose, or it has lost already, that kind of significant position in society, and it will be marginalized much more, and entertainment will take a much stronger leading role, which means it's much more profit-oriented, because art is not so much. Art is an investment for me, and the entertainment is also an investment, but on a business model.
Yeah, it's more profitable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to say profitable. Sometimes it's not at all. It's a very negative approach. But in a way, it means that art is the cradle of entertainment. So it means there will be more and more productions which will be around art. So it means in the future, the managers in art will be much more important than before, because the work will be more complex, more difficult, and you have to fight much more than before, to tell you.
That's a very interesting point. I never thought of it that the managing of it will be more in the forefront. And actually, let's talk about you as a managing director of Trafo. You've been part of Trafo's journey from the very beginning when it opened in 1998, and you are now an operating managing director. I guess my first question before we go back to the very beginning is, now in the pandemic, how does a venue respond to this constantly changing situation that is COVID?
You know, if you have to work in an institution, so there are so many rules what you have to follow. So it's a system, and in the system you have to accommodate all the time to the changes. If the system is small, so the structure is small, it's much easier. Trafo is, I wouldn't say that it's underfunded, but let's say the structure, the labor force was all the time underfunded. This is at the same time a kind of guarantee that devoted people come to work there because they are all the time underpaid. And plus, intellectual, plus there's a certain freedom, and because we work internationally, it's another layer which gives a different perspective and horizon to the work. So it means for us it's very interesting, though it's a desperate time, because we have to try out something else. We tried it. We have lots of webinar programs and so on, and some quite well attended. Even Facebook surprisingly supports it very much. And many people can see it, so very often we reach the 20,000 spectators. We do streaming, and we got to another land. We didn't expect it, but finally we have access to many people. We are really surprised. We're very happy, of course. So for Trafo, this COVID is an experiment, and we are trying to figure out what's the future. Maybe we have some answers, but maybe we have much more question marks. But telling the truth, I cannot tell you what's the future. I feel that because I'm economist and I'm trying to see the process and the wishes and so on in the economies. Those who are the entrepreneurs themselves, even from below, they will have a pressure to get a job. So I guess, though I can hear lots of opinions that resumption will be very slow, I don't think so. It will be very quick. Everybody wants to get a job. Everyone wants to have a revenue. Everybody wants to have a holiday. Everybody wants to salary and so on, you know. So I guess it will be a jump back. And then that's a question. So because that's a recurring of the economy. And it's a political issue as well, so the politicians will not stop. So then the other question, how can we pull into this subject? What's going to happen with the Earth? the green question. It's important to keep in the mind of the society there's a call for that.
The issue of environmentalism, that's I think that's a really big question for venues right now. I know this has been something we talked about on the show earlier as well, about how to make theater and how to make entertainment green, how to be sustainable in our choices, whether that's design, lighting, even rehearsals, but also like what is the carbon footprint of a venue. Do you think tech and technology can help with that?
You know, I have lots of question marks and a certain skepticism how to fight against this. But Trafo right now in the process to join to a European Union initiative that's a Creative Europe. Yes. So we will join to a network, and this network would like to make experiments, and there will be two artists who will be, let's say, the prototype, who will make prototypes of non-touring productions. And it's Jerome Bell, and the other artist is Katie Mitchell.
Wow.
We'll do a piece at the Théâtre Midi, Lausanne, and we will get the script, and we have to restage it. And parallel to restage it, we have to work with scientists and to watch all aspects of our work. So this will be very, very new for us to work with scientists, researchers, how to work in the future. I have many questions again when we talk about art without tour, because I just mentioned I believe in live art, so also in the living art. And then if we do a copy, it's absolutely different. So, but we have to make experiments, then we get to know what to do in the future. So it's important. It's not a cheap project, but we will participate in that.
So just to ask that, so it's essentially a piece, it's almost like a flat pack piece, like an IKEA piece where you have to assemble it in your own venue. Do you have to bring in different creatives and kind of follow instructions, or how does it work?
Yeah, you know, I have addressed the questions that to them, I mean, not to the artists, but to the partners, the potential partners, because we have to submit it, let's say, in June, you know, so it's not decided yet. So before decisions, if I can say that, even before submitted. In Budapest, what we have, it's mostly repertoire theater system. Trafo is the single one, which is, let's say, city theater, but without company. I address the question to them that, sorry, but it's very strange, because now we will carry out a project which is exactly typical in a repertoire theater system, because we have to find the directors, we have to find the actors, actresses, and musicians, or whatever. But anyway, they have right, because we have to make experiments. If we do something, then we start to think together on the future solutions. That's the role of art, to make experiments within the society, which will be very expensive if you do it with the society. So that's a very important role of art.
Well, that was going to be my next question about repertory theater, because Hungary, you know, is kind of built on this culture of in-house companies, and then you have Trafo, which is a completely different beast on its own. And you are also an internationally known venue, so you have a lot of international pieces, dance, interdisciplinary performance, exhibition.
Theaters.
Yep, exactly. So it's very, very different to the kind of culture that you can get in Budapest. Tell me what it's like to be different on the theater scene. What makes Trafo so different to everything else?
We launched our operation in '98. At the beginning, it was very hard, and we were focusing mostly on dance. And it was very clear, the profile, because I said innovation and abstract, if I can say that, abstract narratives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the the essence of Trafo, and of course on project level and domestic and international profile. So this was very important, put together. And it means one day, if somebody came, they saw a Hungarian productions, but the next day or the next week, a British one, so they had a feeling that they are in London, and then afterwards German, so they had that impression they are somehow in Germany. So for me, the Trafo as a receiving house, it's a journey all the time, journey to the unknown world. You can take a risk to make a trip, so you can go wherever you want. The most difficult in this case, because when you present many unknown artists, how to build the trust between the production and the audience, or between the house and the spectators. That was in the first 4 or 5 years very important to build. But it was so important because the independent scene was underrepresented in Hungary at that time. So much of energy from the independent artists themselves. So I did this fusion of these two worlds, and I was luckily successful to build this trust. And now the people, they come, the spectators, they come because they know that a certain skill will be on stage, though they can see completely different things, what they can see in the repertoire theater. In the repertoire theaters, you know why you buy the ticket. It's written, what's the title of the piece, you know the piece, probably. You know who are on stage. You get back what you expect, in a way. In a way. But if you come to Trafo, it's a very, very different approach. Because they don't know the artist, they don't know even the piece. The only thing what can work, that the trust, that the curators of the house, they have a good taste, so.
With that kind of distinction though, maybe repertory theater is a bit more robust and slow, but it's also a bit more steady, because it involves government subsidies, it involves salaries, and I'm assuming during this pandemic it was easier for those venues to think ahead because they had all these people in-house. How did you think ahead when all this came down with all these international productions presumably cancelled?
Yeah, we had to cancel, and we postponed, or some productions totally disappear. Like, for example, we want to deviate, the deviate productions. So it took 3 years to put together money and to make the full coordination, and finally it's gone. It's gone. That was very sad and very sorrowful for me, because I had so much energy to bring them over, and so anyway. Comparing to the repertory theater, I could say that it's a little bit easier, but at the same time, which is so difficult, how we could help to the artist, because they cannot make the show, and they get money in return of the show. So it's a big dilemma, because we have to work according to contracts. So it's very market-oriented what we work. In a way, it's a very capitalistic attitude what we have to present, because those are the rules. Those are let's say, that's the system. We cannot pay if they don't fulfill the contract. So it means the question of the future is that the freelancers, how could they have more protection in the future? But when we talk about this problem, I have to tell you, it's not the problem of the freelancers who work in the art. So it's it's a social, the problem of the entire society, because many people, they have to work on freelance based. And that means you have to be standby, you have to free, you have to very flexible, you have to get ready even by night, so. And then the system was built on a growing economy. The evolution was all the time in in the process, and now there's a strong cutback. So it turns out it works without any protections, no union. And even in case of art or artist, it's much more special, because the relation to the market goes through state money. And then the state money goes to them through regulations. There's a lot of things to think over. What should be done, and how could we protect much more the artist? I can see that the artist in a very vulnerable situation, and they are living in a very precarious life.
We are.
Yes, exactly, like you too, because you are also an artist. If you are young, maybe you are much more flexible. You do this. You don't have so much needs, claims, and so on and so on. But when you get older, this flexibility is less. The problem in Hungary is that though we have a theater institute, Hungarian Theater Institute, but the Hungarian Theater Institute is a museum, basically. I don't see any institution who would have a focus on analytics. So we spend billions of forints in Hungary without knowing that how do we spend the money and why, and so on and so on. The artists, they have very, very high position in that one. And I don't see so much, for example, who could address very practical questions. For example, the managers, understand what does it mean, a certain amount of money, and how can be used. So somehow rationalization would be very, very important. Welcomed, yes, exactly, welcome now. Through the whole system, but the recent political system doesn't want this, because it's very irrational and politically motivated. And then it's very, very dangerous, because it crashes many things. It crashes the soul and crashes the freedom of expression, basically. That's what I can see.
And just on the point of freelancers, because you are you're in a managing position, is there any future in maybe long-term relationships between buildings and freelancers, maybe artistic residencies, or any sort of, making maybe the arts a bit more localized? A lot of conversations are going on about, well, not just because of environmentalism, but also because certain travel restrictions now of just reaching out to local artists and local community and local audiences, and potentially having longer term relationships with freelancers. Is Trafo thinking about that, or have you had any in the past?
Yeah, we have been thinking on for a long time already. In the past 3 years, of course, what to do and what we could do when the pandemic entered and there was a shutdown and no travel and so on and so on. So it meant like all over the world. So we started to think, how could we work much more locally? So it means a domestic scene. It's much more easier to put them on stage. So it means somehow, number one is the local artist, to work with the local artist. The other thing is the touring, which is international. It's interesting from the point of view of international and the domestic artist point of view. We have to think it over the regionality, because I've been working for 3 years to build relations within the regions. But we have to face with many problems. I have to tell you, it's very slow, very slow, because there are not so many institutions, many organizations led by artists, and many of them really concentrate on their own creation and plus the festival, So there is no long-term perspectives at all, and they don't have that practice. They are artists. This is traditions of the past. In the last 30 years, maybe I got acquainted 2 or 3 other directors who are not artists. They are and they are economists. So this regionality, it's a good question. So I've been working with Ljubljana now recently and Belgrade. Belgrade, the program is called Teatroscope, conducted by the French Institute, which is not my priority, because I would like, if it's much more, we would do it by ourselves. Ljubljana is more interesting, but Ljubljana is just at the beginning. We try to map up the region and try to many organizations, institutions, and to build a network and to find the partners within the network according our profiles, our activities. Though I have to tell you, after 2004, when we joined to EU, it was very clear that we have to step on this path, because slowly the foreign culture institutes were closed down or reduced their activity in art, and it means we remained ourselves. I was aware of this process around the beginning of the 90s. That's why I wanted to find an infrastructure. But many other initiatives in our region, they were not. And then they missed the right moment, because I guess in the 90s it was much more easier to build an institution, to start to work in an institution. And now it's maybe a little bit too late, and it's more difficult because populism, nationalism is here, and internationalism is not so welcomed.
When you say region, do you mean Europe, or is there what do I need to think of when you say region?
Behind the Iron Curtain, behind the ex-Iron Curtain.
Which is still very much there, isn't it, culturally?
Yeah, exactly. I can feel exactly that there is no investment anymore, which is okay. We have to do ourselves. So we are grown up, so we are a member of European Union, so we have to do something and not to wait all the time for the best. Mm-hmm. In the Ljubljana, the next meeting is June, a 3-day-long conference. And the name of this, let's say, of this our cooperation, it's called East is Best. Not West, best. Is best. I guess this is the good attitude.
It is a attitude, yeah. Might be a tiny bit exclusive, but I like it. It seems to be very connected, and I think that's very important, right?
Yes, we have to much more connected. Because if you are alone and you invite somebody from abroad, Katie Mitchell or Jerome Bell, and so on, it's expensive to bring over. So it means if you have more partners, it's easier. Plus, because they don't want to use airplanes anymore. So this was your question as well. Probably they would use, the touring companies would use in the region as well, trains. The trains are not quick in our region, you know that very well. If we want to be very attractive, we have to organize more venues, more residencies, okay, because it's also possible to combine a tour with residency or whatever. It's not easy, but I can imagine that. But I guess the tours without airplanes will be longer, much more planned, and the company will stay longer at certain locations. So somehow I feel that if you want to keep in your mind the environmental issues, you must definitely slow down. If you slow down, you have to find out how to operate differently.
Is this the future then? Just slower, longer processes?
That's the big challenge is the market, because the market will push you all the time, wants to impose you something else. That's what you can learn. So the art has two enemies, basically. That's the market and politics. So and it means they all the time wants to press you, and then it means you lose your funding, and if you lose your funding, you have less and less money. You have to do something else beside, and you will have less time for creation, for the process. And what I can see now, the most dangerous things in Europe, not only in our region, we are losing the time. And now, at the age of 62, I learned that what does it mean? Time is money, money is time. Because that's the process. So what I see, no time and no patience anymore, only systems and a very high pace.
I just wanted to respond to that because on this show, we talked about this before with other artists about how the industry is more and more product orientated.
Exactly.
It's all about what you actually end up making rather than the actual process, which is sometimes way more valuable because it actually, that's where you forge your practice. That's where you make connections with a venue or with your local audience. And that's probably, it could be just as beneficial as the end result, which is just a performance or some live element. And I think the more venues understand that and how important process is and how time is actually so valuable to an artist, being able to rehearse for longer. I mean, let's talk about that. Like when you welcome a production, do they get any rehearsal time at your venue? Do you, or is it just you come and perform and you move on?
I mean, the domestic?
Let's talk first domestic. Yes.
Yeah. It's a good question because the main hall is under big pressure, under attack by artists. I would do much less and I would provide much more time for the artist. I really try to manifest it all the time in the team, but somehow, we have a very good heart to the artist. But I really hope after finishing Tao,
Yeah. Why don't we tell everyone else what Tao is who might not?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it very simply.
I guess it would be monetary support for independent companies and artists.
Not only independent, for the sector. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Not only independent.
Yeah. The result of this, that much more company got on stage, much more company were established because it was an easy way to get money for many, many initiatives, and even included money laundry too. So it's
laundering.
Yeah. So anyway, but the result was that the very important revenue was generated through being on stage because you had much more ticket income. So it generated such a intensive life that everybody wanted to be stage. So it means the pace of the institutions, they really went up. More shows, more spectators, much more communication, marketing, and so on and so on. So it was a too high speed. And that's a question, how can we slow down? And in a way, I'm happy because of COVID, because the COVID gives time to you to think it over, to slow down. That's the only solution for the future. But there are many, many artists at the same time who like to get on stage, so how to make this balance, how to deal with, how to find a solution to make more stages for them? I don't think so. I was all the time on the side of selection, so that's why the artists, they didn't like me so much. I guess sorting out in a way, it's important to focus on the quality and to find other solutions, how to help the artists to realize it, to realize their dreams, their productions. It's a good, interesting question.
It is. It definitely. I like the idea of slow living. I think it's because, as you mentioned, you don't want to watch movies anymore because everything is on screens. And I think in the age of Netflix, where everything comes so quickly and on demand, it's very hard to slow audiences down. How has your relationship with your audience changed during this time?
We don't have so much because we are shut down. So it means not so much reaction we can get from after the streamings. The streaming visited in a way, I'm not sure that by our spectators, maybe partly. So we don't know yet. Maybe a part of our public lost their revenues and it means they cannot come. Or maybe everybody will be so eager to come, so they want to see shows, many shows, or so we don't have any clue at the moment.
Have you made any COVID-safe changes to the way the theatre would welcome an audience back? Are you thinking about, I don't know, having any rapid testing or different seating? Have you thought about welcoming everyone else back?
Yeah, that's a question of the future. We try to do our best, and we want to create in the public. We would do everything what they would expect from us. So I don't know what kind of tools we should use in the future. What we used till so far, we used it. But there are so many new information all the time, and we don't know so much about the post-COVID effects, how to behave, what to do. Because everybody was focusing not to avoid infection. Yeah, so that was the first step. When you are infected, how to get out, how to be cured. Well, but we didn't talk so much about what's going to happen post-COVID. When I got it, or I got the vaccine, I was vaccinated. Then afterwards, how should we behave? That's the topic of the future. And when we know this, then we can have a reaction. So we can find a way how to protect the public, to build trust in the public, to come over.
And is that changing any of your artistic decisions? Have you been thinking with artists about making work COVID safe?
No, we believe in the freedom of expression. We wouldn't simplify it so much. Mm-hmm. We have to fight for the artists. We have to create a good circumstances to the artist and to the public, and with less compromises as much as possible.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about you as a managing director. What is your biggest challenge, you think, as a managing director?
It was all the time very challenging because I was called for many decades as a pink guy, a pink guy or pink boy, because I was interested in, let's say, avant-garde, experimental, innovative stuff, and I had to fight with my social circumstances all the time. Mm-hmm. Because they wanted to neglect it, and I believed in so much. So that's why I wouldn't say that what's so difficult now, what was difficult. There's no difference. It's, I guess, to work for innovation in Hungary is definitely a very difficult job. But at the beginning, there was no public, and I created public. And afterwards, I thought the next step to have a little budget. Then I made it. And then I felt that, okay, I have budget, I have big public, so I would like institution. So then I made the institutions. And now what I can see, I'm not the executive director. Barda Beata is the recent executive director of Trafo, that I can see that I did something and it works. No idea, I'm ready to help. Of course, I work constantly, but it's important that it's sustainable. It's in the state of sustainability. Mm-hmm. It's important, but besides that, what's important to build a system below Trafo, because Trafo in itself, it cannot exist. Trafo exists because there are artists, and not the artist is not for Trafo. Trafo is for the artist. But it's important that, because as I explained that in Petrovic, where I was working before, I saw that I presented international domestic productions. And there was a big discrepancy between the productions, And I wanted to to change the situation, because I saw this backward situation of the Hungarians, and then I was motivated to lift them, to lift Hungarians, to create circumstances behind them. And then now, recently, we have to find out what we can do for the artists, how can we fight for the artists, and how can we reshape the circumstances. And that's why we need small organizations like Shinart, workshop foundations, small theaters, because these two are mostly production houses. Then small theaters like Studio K, Skinny, Moo theaters, so we need a structure. So independent scene consists of two things: artist and the infrastructure. And then there must be a balance, and we have to all the time change the balance, or modify or reshape it, because we have to follow the needs.
And does that inform the way you program as well? Do you establish a relationship with the artists before you program them?
It's a good question. At the beginning, Trafo was a dance house. But then dance became so popular in Budapest, so they could perform all over in Budapest. Even a bar was opened by contemporary dance. It was crazy, but it was not related to that culture, what the bar wanted to present. But because contemporary dance was so popular, it was not good to see. I was horrified, telling the truth. And but because the contemporary dance proved that independently they can exist. It was a real life for artists. So slowly, the theater life, independent life, started to evolve. And when I saw the results of the other art field, I pulled into the activity of Trafo slowly. So it means the next step was, let's say, theater, and then new circus, and music was all the time there. I guess a good venue must be sensitive and must react to the changes, because if it doesn't follow the changes, it can't carry out its original aim, to be reflective, to be contemporary, because that's the name, House for Contemporary Art.
Yes, I remember in one interview you said that we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what will happen tomorrow, but we have to be open and receptive. I think that's a very good motto for managing a house. Can you recall a production or a piece of work that was programmed that you really, really cherish?
So, from the point of view of the house, the recognition of house by the society was important part of Frenak, Tricks and Tracks. But for me, maybe this is the first time when I mention another one, which probably very surprising, when we brought back Peter Brook after I don't know how many years, 30 years or 40 years. I was really surprised because I saw the piece, and I have to tell you, I felt that, so he has real age, but his piece was so fresh and abstract, so it was absolutely different language, what I can see in the repertoire theaters. So it's for me, this is my personal opinion, it's absolutely fitted into the profile of Trafo, and I was very, very happy to bring him over. And we managed a meeting with a local artist, theater directors, and I was really surprised that he was sitting there and he said, okay, I'm here to speak to you, and nobody dared to say anything. And he said, my name is Peter. That's the only thing he said. I came to speak to you, so for me it was a very impressive moment, because he, at his age, wanted to get in touch with the younger generation, and it was not easy.
I can imagine, yes. And it's also, I can imagine that it's very intimidating for someone to meet Peter Brook and come up with a question. That's actually a good question. I have two questions left for you.
Okay.
One is, you mentioned the future and you mentioned the plans, and you also mentioned where Truffle came from. So zoom forward to 10 years from now, where do you see Truffle?
It's a good question. I would be happy if we could forge two fields together. That's let's say, the traditional performing art and virtual art. It's not a simple fusion for me. So because virtual art is used very often as a let's say, instead of the scenery. So it's like a tabloid or whatever.
Yeah, it replaces physical sets.
Yes, exactly. Replaces, yes, physical. Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the moment. That's the interesting moment when the virtual art can take over sometimes, or very often, or somehow there will be a certain symbiosis on the dramaturgical level. We had a festival for I don't know how many years, 8 years. It's called Tandimás, Képek Ideje. And that time already got into that issue that working with visuality, because that was that time, put next to performing art. And now if I put virtual art, I feel the same question. When would it have a higher role and not only a kind of reflection?
So that would probably require some experimentation with VR, AR, with different types of technology.
It's a much more important question, because I feel that performing art is in trouble in Hungary, because we are living in the same notion, which means performing art is the pure and cheap. Mm-hmm. But it was true maybe 30 years ago when I was, let's say, I started to work. I used pencil and rubber, and I don't use it anymore. But we expect the same from the theater. And if we expect it, it's wrong, because the life is changed. If the life is changed, then the theater should make a reflection of it. If it doesn't make reflection of it, a real reflection, then it means the younger generation will not see them look in the mirror, you know. Mm-hmm. They won't look at the theater because they will say that it's old-fashioned. But at the same time, if this gap will exist and will exist long time, I guess it means there will be a revolution, hopefully a revolution then, which means this gap, this backward situation, this disadvantageous situation can be jumped over to create new art, and that would be in that case a revolution. We should pull together these two worlds. At the moment, we cannot do. We have a club program where you can see technology in performing art, but telling the truth, the actors, dancers, actresses, they are not so much motivated to come to see how the others, they use this technology in their art. I'm not happy for that. Because the tutors, they represent very important things, but they not think in the future, because they are generally 30, 40, 50 years old, you know.
Yeah, they're not forward-looking enough.
Yes, exactly. So that's why it's a big question mark, and it's the future of Trafo is really, for me, in my mind, is strongly linked to this issue.
I think that's a really good goal for your building. Our final question is something I ask from every guest. I'm in the Ram Theatre. You have been here, or you know of the Ram Theatre. But if you were here with me right now, and if anything were possible, what would you like to make happen in this space?
First of all, I don't know the space, but I guess the new director is a good choice. she's that kind of artist or realizator, I guess, who would poke this question, what I just mentioned to you. The reality and virtuality, it must be together. And I guess if we want to have future for the theater, it must go on this path. I would like Trafo, but I guess that could be an interesting new profile in Budapest if one theater would be totally dedicated to this. Though probably it must stay between, or must balance between entertainment and experimentation. But we can be a partner with in the experimentation. And it's easier to go through this path if we are more, as I said to you.
Yeah.
We are alone, you are single. Of course, it's very nice, but it's much harder.
Yes, well, Tima Pop, who is the new artistic director you mentioned, she is very keen on exploring that digital land, or how theatre can be more experimental in that way.
I know her for a long time, I don't know, maybe for 2 decades. I'm following her career, and it's quite impressive. But now it's interesting because then there's a structure now, it's a physical structure, and it means it's a tie at the same time, and not just you go that way because you can do there. So it's really she has to face many questions now in the future, and which means to make good investments.
Well, Gyuri, thank you so much for coming on Traverse, and I find it fascinating how, above all else, theatre has been persevering and just going through this. So best of luck to you and your team, and I hope that we'll be able to go to Trafo in person soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us, and please join us next time to see what's next for our industry.